Maria has spoken. Maria Neri is, as I mentioned, a Filipina Ecosocialist. She has worked for a group called CONSARD since the mid-1990s. CONSARD is a grouping of popular and non-governmental organisations working on agrarian reform and rural development in Mindanao, in the Philippines. So she will be coming at it from a slightly different angle, a more political angle perhaps. I should also have mentioned at the beginning that this meeting is sponsored by the Green Party and also Socialist Resistance. I think Garth is somewhere representative at the back there. Both of those will say a few words about those organisations towards the end. But Maria, thank you very much again for coming. Let me help you just sort this out. Yes, is that okay?
Good evening. Thank you for coming, and I was quite fortunate that I came here all along from the Philippines just to be in front of you. It's my first time to be with this kind of people because I usually work with peasants. So I will be talking about food and climate change in the perspective of the grassroots in our country. So in the Philippines, especially in Asia. So it's my first time that maybe I cannot give facts like those of you who are here, but I will try my very best to relay what is happening in our country, especially in food and climate change. Before I came here, I was invited by some members of the Socialist Resistance because we had met somewhere in Amsterdam and talking on food, and when I shared about all these things, they had invited me to come. And it was also an opportunity for us to let you know what we are doing in the Philippines, especially for the peasants, the small farmers that we have. So, for just some points, if you don't know about the Philippines, I don't know, it's a small country with more than 7,100 islands, and we are an archipelagic country, a very important country for the Southeast Asia, because we are the stepping board to Southeast Asia. If everybody wants to go to China, to Vietnam, to Malaysia, and everything, you can start off from the Philippines. So we have two major islands, it's Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. And why I mentioned that, because the ongoing clashes now of the military and the revolutionary groups are basically in Mindanao, and the central government is in Luzon, that's particularly in Manila, and Visayas is somewhat Western district. So the ongoing situation now in the Philippines, militarily, especially in Mindanao, is highly militarized due to the clashes between revolutionary forces. There are so many revolutionary forces in the Philippines, especially after the split of the Communist Party. There are so many parties in the Philippines. Outside of that, there are the Moro revolutionary forces, before the Moro National Liberation Front with Normis Warrior as the head, and now with Salamat of the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, who is fighting for the government, for their ancestral claim on their homeland, and they are fighting for a separation from the Philippines. But anyway, our population, we are a small country with only 29 million hectares, but we are 93 million people. So could you imagine? And because we are a mixed culture, because we have the majority Christians, or we call majority Filipinos, and we have the indigenous peoples, and also the Moro people. That's how unique we are in the Philippines. So with our composition, you can just imagine we cannot easily understand each other, because the Moro people has 13 groups of ethno-linguistic groups. They have different languages. With the Lomads, we have 18 to 21 tribes all over the Philippines. And for the majority Filipinos, we have regional dialects. So, but we have one national language, but the medium of instruction in school is in English. We are forced it because we are being colonized, and they want us to speak English so that they can conquer the Philippines. That's part of the history. As part of the climate that we had, we are in the moderate temperate zone, but we are facing the Pacific Ocean. That's why there are so many typhoons in our area, in our country now, that in a year, the A to Z alphabet, we have that because we call we have the Bureau of those who are with the Pag-asa, or the what do you call this, in charge of the weather station, they name the typhoons after the alphabet. So from A to Z in a year, maybe more than that, because in every month there are 3 to 4 typhoons happening in our country. So could you imagine how that tolls into food production in our country? But even with that, we are a very rich country. We are a very rich country. We have rich resources. That's why it has become a magnet with all those who wanted to exploit our resources. And that is very historical with our colonial past. You know, everything has been taken away from us. All of our resources are almost not within the Filipino people, but with all the multinational corporations. Because our country, as part of the overall design of the capitalist model, they are getting our country to be subjected to the programs. We are what we call, in our economy, they call the export-oriented and import-dependent and a debt-ridden economy. So our resources are exported. They are semi-processed or raw materials being exported. And we are importing some or major materials for our basic industries, which is not also ours. But to finance our economy, we had to make loans from the IMF World Bank and to every financial institutions that who wanted to give loans to us in exchange of conditions, of course. Our export crops had been really agricultural, because we are a very agricultural country, and many of our resources had been going out to the global market. Recently, because all of our industries and even our resources had been privatized and owned by big multinational corporations, our economy is being supported by the overseas Filipino workers who are everywhere in the world. Could you imagine that the remittances of our Filipino workers who are working abroad is 40% of our gross national product, and the rest is being sourced out from the loans to IMF World Bank and the Asian Development and everybody who wants to get investment in the Philippines. And one also of the major source of our income is the extraction of our mineral resources. We have different kinds of mineral resources that is operating in our country, and there are so many mining companies which has been operating in our country, and they had been more speculations now. This also destroys even our food zones, especially because when you destroy the mountains, then it goes down to the oceans. So it really destroys our food ecozone, and we are very worried of that, because all of these things, especially in Mindanao, they are happening. So even with our resources, we are also experiencing the food crisis. It's not because we do not produce food. Because as Filipinos and Asians, we are rice and corn eating people. we are producing rice and yet we are importing rice. You could not imagine. Even the International Rice Research Institute is based in our country. And how could you think that we are importing rice even from our neighbors, Vietnam, Thailand, and even the United States? We are actually importing. It's not because we cannot produce, it's because most of our lands are being taken away from us. They are for agribusiness corporations, and what was left behind was the upland portion of the country, which is less productive, and yet it is also threatened by mining operations and logging companies operating in our country. So what can we expect? There's really crisis in food. And also, as part of the conditions of our loan, I think it was also a condition that we had to produce agricultural cash crops for the market, for the capitalist market, but for the food we have to import. That's very ironic because we are agricultural country and yet we have to import rice. And that was what has happened in 2008. And some of our critics says, no, it's not because we cannot produce, but because it's part of the conditions being set by IMF, World Bank, and other financial institutions whom we owe so much. We owed billions and billions of pesos, and yet we could not pay back the even for the interest of those loans. So maybe we were like some of those countries in some parts of the world who are being tied up to this kind of arrangements. So